Today, I'm going to ask you to challenge the assumptions that are leading brands astray. And in order to begin, I want to introduce you to my son, Jake. This is a picture of Jake when he was 10 years old. And shortly after the trip that we were on, when we took this photograph, we're traveling in the car, and Jake begins to ask my wife and I questions about the birds and the bees. And I got really flustered. I was not prepared to have this conversation. My wife, on the other hand, seemed all too eager to explain the reality of the situation to my 10-year-old son. So she was arguably very open and candid about that. And I kept watching Jake through the rearview mirror of like, how's he digesting this? And he was quiet for a long period of time, and he was just staring out the window. And minutes passed, and I assumed that he had moved on to other things. And then he yells out, "Wait a minute, I have 2 brothers. That means you guys had the sex 3 times. And I understood the math that he was doing in his head, but he clearly lacked some context, and he lacked some additional information that maybe would have had him draw a different conclusion. And I think that we do that in business all the time. We take a little bit of information about something that we don't truly understand, and then we draw really big conclusions. And sometimes those conclusions can lead us astray. So today I'm going to tackle 4 of these. The first assumption that I want us to tackle is that your job is to help your company manufacture or sell good products or services. Many people believe that, and that is false. Believing that assumption inappropriately focuses your company's resources inward, and it causes you to lose sight of what business you're actually in. I know many businesses that are trying to compete on product innovation or technical prowess or savvy supply chain management, and what you see is a lot of really talented people competing for resources, forming functional silos, and pursuing this false belief that if I just do my job really well, this company's going to thrive. The world is full of defunct companies who sold really good products or offered really good services. This is the reality. Peter Drucker, the legendary Peter Drucker, says it best. All companies exist to service a customer. It is only in the pursuit of serving a customer and adopting a customer-centric mentality that you will be able to compete in what has become an increasingly hyper-commoditized marketplace where essentially the parity is rampant and we are pursuing differentiation that has nominal consumer value. So we have to reorient ourselves to understand what are we actually doing. I'm not advising us to make bad products and services. I'm suggesting that we understand that those are a means to an end. They are not the end itself. Now, there's lots of different industries that are being disrupted at different paces. The volatility affects different categories at different times. We talked about disruption yesterday. When you read about these types of companies, what you read about are businesses who have a commitment to servicing a particular cohort of consumers. And that means that they are more committed to that audience group than to their offering. And that they're not just trying to stay relevant year after year, they are relevant decade after decade, oftentimes by changing what they sell or how they sell it. But what doesn't change is their commitment to a particular customer cohort. Now, I want to recognize Coca-Cola, who's being honored here today. For many years, we handicapped the Nikes and the Starbucks and the Coca-Colas because their stories were so well known. We wanted to put a spotlight on other brands that were doing remarkable things. But even if you look at what Coca-Cola has done the past 5 years, their story is remarkable. Consider that Coca-Cola is one of the largest and oldest companies in existence. They were around for 80 years with one soft drink, Coke. Then they recognized that non-alcoholic beverage drinkers' preferences began to change. So in 1960, they bought Minute Maid. And then they had the luxury of waiting another 22 years before any other meaningful shift. And that was the North American fitness craze of the early 80s, in which they created Diet Coke. Then we all know about the new Coke thing. We kind of look over that part of Coke's history. But between 1985 and today, Coca-Cola has made so many new products in a perpetual state of evolution that if you drank one Coke product per day, it would take you 9 years to try every drink. You can Google that. That's a true statistic. That's because Coca-Cola's expertise is not making cola beverages. Coca-Cola's expertise is understanding what people want to drink, when they want to drink it, where do they want to drink it, and their brilliance is even how much are people willing to pay for it. Consider that I have paid 25 cents for a can of Coke that I bought in bulk at Costco. And I have paid $6 for a cup of Coke that I bought at a ball game. How many of you are so in tune to your customers that you can exploit that sort of strategic pricing strategy? My guess is not very many. If the goal of a business is to service a customer, it then begs the question, how customer-centric is your company? Well, fortunately, some smart people over at Forrester did some research about this. And they were able to bucket thousands of businesses into one of three categories: customer naive, customer aware, or customer obsessed. They then asked the brand leaders within those companies one simple question: did your revenues grow by at least 10% last year? For those who said yes, they were 2.5 times more likely to be a customer-obsessed organization than a customer-naive organization. I like those odds. I'll take 2.5 times. So if I want to benefit with 2.5 times more likely success of having double-digit growth, then that begs the question, well, what does it mean to be customer-obsessed? Well, Forrester looked at a few different categories. The first category dealt with customer journey maps. Customer journey maps are business tools. These are strategic exercises that audit every single touch point that a customer is going to have with your brand, and then it uses analytics and creativity to try to improve upon each one of those touch points. Customer-naive companies report having no customer journey maps. Customer-aware companies say, I have them, but we don't use them very well or very often. I know that in my experience, we'll see companies that have done a decent job auditing the touch points, but they haven't done a very good job of smartly improving upon the touch points in meaningful ways. And customer-obsessed companies say, we not only have customer journey maps, we use them religiously. Those are the tools by which we allocate our resources, and those are the tools that inform the KPIs that go to the C-suite to make tough business decisions. The second area is organizational. Customer-naive businesses tend to focus their marketing resources on channels. They have their teams devoted to tactics. You'll find a retail flyer team, an email marketing team, a web team, maybe a mass media team, a search engine team. Customer-aware companies are more focused on marketing objectives. So you'll find a new customer acquisition team or a customer retention team. Maybe we're going after more of a residential or a commercial consumer group type of team. And within customer-obsessed companies, you find customer segment managers, or sometimes they're called community managers. I remember Bill Neff from Yeti was on this stage last year. And he talked about one of Yeti's key to success was they have a manager for anglers. They have a manager for hunters. They have a manager for sailors. They have a manager for bull riders. People whose job is to become intimately familiar with the needs of those customer audiences. Now, I have a confession to make. This is actually the first time I think I've ever said this in public. I used to be a consultant for Blockbuster Video. That's a career-limiting admission. It's like bragging about being a consultant for the Hindenburg team that blew up. But I was in the boardroom when they were making some tough decisions. And one of the things that I would remember bothering me was that their director of CRM would be constantly bragging about how effective her response rates were to their direct mail and email marketing programs. And that's very common. Channel managers are oftentimes touting the effectiveness of their channel. And they're almost always going to the boss asking for more budget so that they can optimize their specific channel because they have some KPIs that are showing their business portion is working very well. But the reality is there are macro trends that are causing the demise of the business. So the Toys R Us group had dozens of channel managers optimizing $60 million worth of media the month that Toys R Us declared bankruptcy. So channel managers they had their head too far in the stand. You know, optimizing channels is certainly nice, but what you need are portfolio managers who understand the nuances of customers so that they can more readily sound the alarm when there's concerns around traffic or profitability tied to a specific cohort of people. The third area or symptom of customer obsession deals with messaging. Customer-naive companies love their stuff. They talk about their stuff all the time. It's very features-centric, and it's frequently very promo-centric. It's always on sale. Customer-aware companies are a little bit better at focusing on end-user benefits. They have some audience insights, and so they want to talk about what you're going to gain by using that product. But customer-obsessed companies often don't even talk about or show their product at all. Instead, they're talking about the values and the aspirations of their cohort. You saw Douglas yesterday, believing in a world where people can belong anywhere. Where was the house? Where was the room in the Airbnb ad, right? Here's a really admittedly oversimplified example. But in this ad, Rockstar is touting value. Get a whole lot of caffeine for cheap. Monster lists the types of customers that they're trying to attract, and they're encouraging their audience to unleash the beast. And then you've got Red Bull, who doesn't even talk or show their product. They're just enabling a lifestyle that their customers adore. Which one of those do you think works best? Well, if you want to look at market share, Rockstar's not even in the top 10. Monster is actually growing because Monster is stealing pages from Red Bull's playbook, which somebody said the other day that their R&D department is to rip off and duplicate all the other great ideas that other people do, which is brilliant. I hope you do the same. But Red Bull remains the dominant leader. Now, we honored Red Bull in our very first year of the gathering. And what I remember most is how much pride they took that they transformed their marketing department from a cost center into a revenue driver. They actually are earning income from the marketing and the activations that they now do, which is, if you can get people to pay to participate in your branding, that is the ultimate sign of marketing done well. The final area to think about your customer obsession deals with research. Customer-naive companies tend to emphasize secondary research and prioritize demographic profiles. And it kind of makes sense because demographics are beneficial for media-centric marketing plans because media is still sold largely on a demographic basis. I would argue that's the only benefit that a demographic profile has to your business. Customer-aware companies pay the tuition necessary to get smart about their customers. So they work off of actionable customer insights. It's not about how much data can you get, it's about how much insight can you glean. And they oftentimes have some customer metrics, most often a net promoter score, that helps inform some metric around brand health. But customer-obsessed companies treat customer intelligence as a core competitive advantage. You'll find more robust teams within those organizations that do nothing but analyze and assess and try to predict what customers are doing. And they've evolved to a heightened metric that we call an audience engagement score. They do a better job of not measuring satisfaction, but tracking what are the expectations and how well is the brand delivering against those expectations. Now, I love audience engagement scoring. That's a speech for another day. What I want to give you today is the most simple piece of advice that I could offer for anybody that wants to take their company down this journey from customer naive to customer obsessed. 3 simple ideas. And I'm going to use the Home Depot as my muse here. We've done a lot of work with the Home Depot. I actually used to work for a Home Depot out of grad school. I'm a big fan of the company. 3 things that don't cost a lot of money. First, they've rebranded their headquarters the Store Support Center. One of my very favorite quotes is, "All great transformations begin with linguistics." So if you want to change some behavior, change the way that you're talking. I've seen way too many corporations where the corporate, white-collared, high-paid staff feel superior to the lower-level, front-line, minimum wage workers on the front line. That is a toxic mentality. So the Home Depot, as the 5,000 employees are driving into their headquarters, are reoriented to we exist to service the store. We exist to service where the magic is actually happening. They are not inferior to us. The second thing that the Home Depot does is that 90% of their store leadership used to be an hourly associate. So they have proactively prioritized promoting from within. So they're going to say the people that are making the most important day-to-day decisions need to be the people who are the most familiar with what the customer actually wants and is doing. And then the last thing that they do is every single employee, no matter the pay grade, has to spend the first 2 weeks wearing an orange apron in the store. I always hid back in the seed aisle because I was worried that people were going to ask me questions that I didn't know how to answer. So I was organizing the seeds in the garden center. And then every single year thereafter, you have to spend a week in the store. Zappos, who was here a few years, did the same thing. All the employees have to work the call center over the holiday season. My guess is many of the executives in this room have not spoken with one of their customers in months, maybe even years. And that is a huge problem. Does being customer-centric work? Home Depot has grown $40 billion in the past 10 years. And look at their stock price. This looks like one of the runs on the ski hills here in Banff, right? Being customer-centric is good for business, but it requires you to really be honest about what business you're actually in. It's not to make stuff or to sell stuff. It's to service somebody exceptionally well. All right, assumption number 2. In order to grow revenues, you must advertise more. Now, I am frequently accused of being anti-advertising. Some people have playfully dubbed the gathering the anti-cons event. And while I take a small degree of pleasure in that, advertising absolutely has a role. Absolutely should have, there's a time and a place to do it. I just believe that most brands are overdosing on that particular tactic. So yes, this one is false. And I really want to go deep into this one because there is an advertising industrial complex that is highly motivated and highly skilled to convince marketers that they should be buying more ads, not less. And when you look at the national spending of advertising year over year, they're winning to the detriment of your business and your brand. So I mean, a quick tangent, but 2 weeks ago, I was invited to speak at an ad agency summit, which I always applaud people that are willing to do that because I sometimes have some critical things to say about the industry. And I ran into one of the sponsors, and the sponsors has this multi-million-dollar digital media agency. I said, to be honest, one of my more popular speeches is called Programmatic is Problematic. And I talk about how digital media companies are leading a lot of clients astray. He didn't argue with me. He didn't disagree with me. Instead, he pleaded with me to not be too harsh or too critical because he had a quota to meet and he needed these agencies to be able to buy in. This is the reality of paid media. There are 4 ways to get people or to get a company to make money. You can get more customers to buy more often or to buy more products more often at higher margin. It's primarily the 4 ways. Only one of those is a beneficiary of paid media. The other 3 do not require that tactic. And my concern is that as marketers, we're not spending enough time or enough creative energy on the other 3 things. We're just acquire, awareness. But there's 4 ways. And when I do see people focusing on those 3 things, what I primarily see them doing is working on loyalty programs. I don't have an axe to grind against loyalty programs. I don't hate them the same way I don't hate advertising. Again, the pendulum has just swung too far. I see more examples of bad loyalty programs than I see good ones. Our phone rings more from clients who say, Chris, we built a loyalty program years ago, and now I regret it. So we have to find what are better ways to achieve the objectives that loyalty programs were intended to do, but have failed to do. Here's the problem with loyalty programs. They tend to overemphasize points and overpromise personalization. The overemphasis of points, you got to appreciate that you're introducing a nominal value to your customer base, right? And you're introducing a system that is incredibly expensive to maintain. And perhaps worse of all, you're starting to reward existing behavior rather than properly incentivizing incremental behavior. That's why they become such a burden to the P&L or to the balance sheet. And listen, personalization is generally a good thing. I've just seen the promise of personalization for 20 years. I think of it as the holy grail, the thing that the marketers keep looking for but have yet to find. Most personalization within most loyalty programs results in a bombardment of lackluster emails in the member's inbox. That is not proper personalization. So what do I advise? I advise that we shift the paradigm to participation. That's why we were so excited to have Douglas back here last night talking about belonging. If you really want to know what it takes to create a cult brand, you start to say, what can we do to give our best customers better access? What can we do to make them feel like insiders? What can we do to allow them to co-create with our products and services? And what can we do that will allow them to co-mingle with each other? This is something that cult brands have been perfecting for decades. Harley-Davidson was Colt's very first client. We were thrilled to get a sneak peek behind the curtain at the genius behind their Harley ownership group. This is what I think makes them the gold standard of loyalty. In their own words, HOG is a sponsored club, the granddaddy of all of our community building efforts. It serves to promote a desirable lifestyle, not just products. It was founded in 1983. It's never had a points-based currency. They have over 1 million members, and those members spend 30% more than other Harley owners. A better way to make money than just acquiring more. Marketers, you have a huge opportunity to rise up. Create better opportunities for people to participate with your brand and with each other, with these tribes that we keep talking about on these stages. A few examples. I would argue the majority of CrossFit's rampant success is based on their ability to get diverse groups of people to commingle into a gym in a way that makes working out more fun and more motivating. Nike Plus does the exact same thing. They've just decided to do it via a mobile app where these tribes can get together to coordinate physical meetups or to compare their stats or to even compete with each other virtually. Hot Wheels, who's being honored at this conference, does a masterful job of extending their brand's relevance from low-cost kid toys to super expensive big boy toys at real-world meetups all across the country at their Legends Tour that they host. Spotify is being honored here today. The pervasiveness of their platform is largely predicated upon the genius and the simplicity of allowing you to create your own playlist and share it with somebody else. And for the B2B marketers in the room, my guess is that you're spending huge sums of money to swim in a sea of sameness at trade shows across this great land, when in reality, Salesforce said, rather than spending that money, I'm going to create something that would attract my customers to me. Their Dreamforce conference now has 170,000 people paying them to participate in their branded event. If anybody follows me on LinkedIn, you know I'm always ranting about something. This is why. This is the stat that drives me more crazy than any other statistic. 82% of consumers are disappointed by brands, and 77% of brands could disappear and no one would care. And we call ourselves brand marketers. We are failing our marketplace if we allow these statistics to be true. Why can't we just do something better? Why can't we do something more engaging? If only we had the money to do something truly awesome. Oh, wait a minute, we do have the money. $240 billion were spent last year, largely on 30-second TV spots that we have learned how to skip and digital ads that we have learned how to ignore. This is a colossal waste. This is a colossal opportunity for brand leaders to step up and do something better. We are honoring these brands on this stage. Every single one of them advertises. I am not anti-advertising, but their brands are beloved because of how well they make impressions, not how well they buy impressions. You know what these brand leaders have done better than most? Is they have figured out a way to create novelty within their business. And consumers crave novelty. This is what people are looking for. Give me something that not everybody else is offering. And the best part is if you can deliver novelty, they will proactively seek you out and they will proactively pay you more for it, up to 20% more. So if you want to make more money, why aren't we doing more things that more customers would pay more money for? An example, I'm a big fan of Fanatics. A friend of mine is their CMO. It's one of the largest destinations for sports apparel and jerseys. Their marketing team did some research and understood the true empathy that goes into what does it take for a consumer to spend $100 on a jersey. Most of us living in the top 5 or 1% don't understand the conscious pricing decision that somebody has to make if they're going to give that to their kid for Christmas or for their birthday. It's a big ticket purchase for more than half of America. And so they said, what can we as a marketing team do that will address that barrier? Because what they're worried about is if your player gets traded or if your player joins another team, right? That's a legitimate concern. You don't want an outdated jersey if Patrick Mahomes is playing for New England next year. So they partnered with American Express, and they created the Jersey Assurance Program, right? Now, if your player gets traded to a different team, Fanatics will swap that jersey out with either the player at the new team or a new favorite player on the old team. It's brilliant, but required marketers thinking differently about what their job actually is. We honored Porsche on this stage last year. Porsche has always made fantastic cars. But what their marketers decided to do was come up with a better way for their best customers to revel in the brand. And so they came out with the Passport program. This was piloted in Atlanta last year. It's now rolling out into multiple markets this year. And essentially, in a day and age of ride sharing and car sharing, this allows a Porsche fanatic to be able to drive any car in the fleet for one monthly payment. It's a brilliant idea for people to understand that some people are willing to pay a whole lot more for an elevated experience. I always have a tradition of saying something positive about Apple. I think they have perfected their audience engagement strategies. I think the Genius Bar remains a game changer for both retail and customer service. But I actually want to give a shout out to somebody in the audience today. I don't know if I see them this morning. But there's a company here in Canada called F12. F12 is a B2B IT solutions company. They basically outsource all of your IT management so that small business owners can focus on what they do best, which is servicing customers. When you get an F12 laptop, because they provide all of their clients with custom hardware and software, if at any time that machine starts to get glitchy, you hit the F12 key. Instantly, a customer service rep takes over your machine. If they can't remote dial in and fix whatever the problem was, they dispatch a brand new piece of hardware, same day, fully loaded with all of your information that's been backed up from the cloud. It's a brilliant idea about taking the barrier of tech support to a whole new level by spending money differently to make an impression instead of buy an impression. Somebody once said, "Don't tell me you're funny, just tell me a joke." That is how I feel about marketing. I think that we should take the billions and billions of dollars that we are using to try to convince people that we are special and instead do something that actually is special. All right, I'll get off that soapbox. I get a little riled up about that. I'm sweating a bit. Assumption number 3. In order to drive traffic or trial, you need to offer discounts or incentives. Consider this staggering fact. Not included in that $240 billion number on the previous assumption are the hundreds of billions of dollars being spent on markdowns, coupons, BOGOs, and doorbusters. The margin-eroding stuff that marketers seem to love. That is our default. Just give me a sale and I'll be able to promote your product. Good marketing is promoting products that never have to go on sale. Chip Wilson was just up here. I don't know how long it was before a Lulu pant ever went on sale. So that's the opportunity that we have before us. On this stage, I think it was 4 years ago, I can't remember, the CMO of Old Navy, he was newly appointed, comes up here with his own confession. He was on sale 50% off or more for half of the year. What is his next strategy? Come to Old Navy and I will pay you $10. That's where that brand is headed. That is where many brands are headed if you do not wean yourself off of that promotional heroin that too many businesses are addicted to. This is the reality. Nobody has to offer a discount or an incentive to drive trial. Do you want to know what actually drives trial and traffic? Here's a hint. It's referrals. And referrals have been around ever since Eve said to Adam, "You've got to try this apple." Word of mouth marketing has always been and will always be the single greatest form of marketing. Our job is not to create more communications. Our job is to create products or services or experiences that are so remarkable that people will want to remark about them. That is marketing done well. Oracle did some research. What is the most influential thing in forming purchase decisions? The number one thing that is 3 times more influential than the next viable option are friends, families, and coworkers. These are our people. These are the people that we're going to make decisions. Sorry, I got messed up there. The second one is online shoppers. I find that one equally egregious. Consider that customers are saying, "I will trust a complete stranger online more than I will trust the carefully crafted marketing messages that we spent 6 weeks trying to hone and perfect back at headquarters." Number 3 is frontline staff. I think that's really sad because we're seeing more and more businesses cut back on frontline staff, which I think is insane. Why are you reducing the budget for the people who are persuading customers that are actively in the app, active shopping? And then finally is influencers, and that's a really interesting one. Amanda, I know, spoke about influencers yesterday. Listen, there's a reason why the Kardashians make so much money, but there's also a reason why there's so many imposters that are getting into the influencer marketing game. I think of influencer marketing like what email was 20 years ago or social was 10 years ago. It's the Wild West, so proceed with caution as you go into the influencer marketing game. Not on the list of the top 4 is advertisers. We've got to think differently about how people are actually making decisions. We got to think differently about what our job description is. If I was king for a day, this would be my brief. What if instead of creating ads, we created advocates? What sort of things could we use? What sort of resources could we bring to bear? What sort of creative firepower? What sort of agency relationships? What kind of bold things would our business do differently if we didn't think about our job as a communications professional, but as to get people to get so lathered up they can't help but talk about us? Now, unfortunately, I'm not very optimistic about the prospect of that happening because we have bred an entire generation of marketers who are really markdowners. Their skill sets have shifted. The things that we've now prioritized have shifted. We have people that are more masterful at creating something clever or funny or breakthrough than we have people that are creating value propositions that people actually care about. So we got to think differently about, well, who's going to save the day? How are we going to get the companies back on track? And we were pleased to find a new species of marketer. This is a list of all 2.3 million species on Earth. And if you look really close, down here on the left, you're going to find a customer experience officer. Now, this role was birthed out of necessity. It was birthed because marketers were too busy masking the symptoms to the problems rather than actually fixing the problems themselves. So they're starting to be replaced within enlightened organizations. This is how the Wikipedia defines the CXO. It's an executive responsible for the overall experience that people have with a company's products or services. Given that user experience is quickly becoming a key differentiator in the modern business landscape, the CXO is charged with bringing holistic experience design to the boardroom and making it an intrinsic part of the company's strategy and culture. The reality is that should have been the job description of the marketing team. But the marketing team wasn't fixing the problems that needed fixing. It's why the CMO has a short tenure, and it's why new executives and new teams and new skill sets are starting to be injected into organizations to think differently. One word of caution on your CXO journey. Early attempts at integrating a CXO into a business seem to be disproportionately focused on data and technology. Listen, data and technology are great. And it is the reason why Accenture is now becoming a larger ad agency than ad agencies. People need better data and tech. But never underestimate the importance of the emotional connection that people need to have with a brand, which you don't always get in data or technology. And don't underestimate the power of creativity and a big, bold idea. In my experience, CXOs that are reporting into CTOs or CIOs are getting a little bit distracted on data hygiene and warehousing and analytics, whereas CXOs that are reporting directly to CEOs have a larger runway to do more important things more quickly. All right, I got to hurry up here. Assumption number 4, marketing teams should be focused on external audiences. My guess is that if I was to survey this room by a show of hands, how many marketers feel it's an important part of their job description to boost internal engagement? Less than 80, I bet you 80% would say no. This is my job description. I got to bring more people in. That's a huge disconnect between the surveys that we get back when we interview hundreds of cult brands to pick the winners for this event. Cult brand leaders understand the connection between internal engagement and external engagement, and how internal engagement has this wonderful correlation with both sales and, probably more importantly, profitability. I believe that the research on this, the data on this is so exhaustive that I'm not going to spend any other time on it other than to show you one report. And I actually think Sandra, I caught the last part of her stuff, Aegis Living has 80% increases, which is insane by focusing on internal engagement. But this one from Gallup says, work units in the top quartile of employee engagement outperform the bottom quartile units by 10% on customer ratings, 21% in productivity, and 22% in profitability. Those work units also saw significantly less absenteeism, better turnover, less shrinkage, fewer safety incidents, and fewer quality defects. Marketers, if you truly understood the power of this principle, you would be racing down the hallways to your HR organizations and begging them to use your time, your talents, your teams, your creative, your media budget to do something remarkable to make your company one of the best places to work. I got in trouble a little bit a year ago. An HR pub asked me to write an article, and I say I suggested. It's probably more than a suggestion. I said, hey, CEOs, fire yourself, or boards, fire your CEOs if they're using their culture committees to plan parties. I believe that culture committees are these hugely valuable assets that have devolved into Christmas party or summer barbecue planning committees. It is such a waste. It's such a missed opportunity. Form an amazing culture committee. Make sure that it's cross-functional, both by discipline and by level within the company. Give it a noble charter. Help them understand that they are here to save the business. Compensate them for participating. They will need to do real work. This is not something you do on nights and weekends off the side of your desk. Have them report to the C-suite on a regular basis and empower them with the mandate to get all of the organization properly indoctrinated. And then my last tip would be in the spirit of an employee life cycle, and if you're a marketer looking for the next group of potential customers, start with prospective employees. Don't think of this as an HR function. These are people that love your brand so much, they want to devote their career to it. So create a program that makes sure that they're going to shop you regardless of whether or not they get a job. Secondly, go after your currently employed employees. Start with your leadership team. Use your marketing powers to get them properly engaged. Then go down to the frontline staff, whether it be call center, sales agents, retail, what have you, and get them aligned. Then use your resources to fill in the middle, the rank and file, but then don't stop until you get every contractor, supplier, and vendor. Every single person in that second bucket has a vested interest in the financial health and well-being of your company. So convert them into just being one-dimensional value-add people to two-dimensional by shopping you more regularly. And then lastly, a group that gets completely overlooked are alumni. If anybody that's quit, laid off, retired, I don't care. Marketers, if they're doing their jobs well, should be able to go after the people who have worked with your business for years or decades in the past and make sure that they continue to shop and that they continue to refer. All right. Someone once said to me, Chris, the best marketing that many marketers are doing is convincing their organization that their work is actually working. I was like, ouch, that's a little harsh. But from my vantage point, when I see not only the billions of dollars that are being wasted, but the underutilized talent, the compartmentalizing, the minimizing of what's really possible when you get a hyper-engaged group of people tasked with a noble mission to do something great, it's awesome. When you've seen it done right, which is why we created this event, don't take my word for it, let's just put them on stage and let people see what good is. We've got 50 speakers here this week that are on these stages to try to show you there is a better way. So please take lots of notes. Stay hydrated, and we're going to come back here tonight to celebrate them, and then your job is to go back to your companies on Monday and actually do something about this. Thank you.